Hello, everybody, and thank you again for watching this. Before I start, I want to say that I hope this brings any blessing and value to your life, and I almost feel like I need to preemptively apologize because I feel like the stresses of life are affecting my psyche a bit with this, and I don't want to allow that to put a damper or affect this Bible study negatively. And so if it does, I just preemptively apologize. This is a huge chapter. This is a chapter with really, really big, powerful things in it. It's Matthew chapter 24. There's a lot on prophecies and end time prophecies. So, beginning in Matthew chapter 4, Jesus came out of the temple, was going away with his disciples, and one of his disciples, point out the buildings to him. And I think in a different gospel, they even like make a comment about it, like, "Oh, look at how wonderfully huge these buildings are. It took so long to build them," stuff like that. And Jesus says, "Do you not see all these things? Truly, I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another, which will not be torn down." Jesus prophesying about the destruction of the temple. As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us when these things will happen, and what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age?" A sobering question from them. Jesus answered and said to them, "See to it that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will mislead many." We've seen tons of that. "You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for those things must take place, but that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and in various places there will be famines and earthquakes. But all these things are merely the beginning of birth pangs. Then they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. At that time, many will fall away and will betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and mislead many." We've seen plenty of that. "Because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold." That is an interesting correlation Jesus made there between the lacking of law and people's love growing cold. It might be something to do with like playing by the rules. Like if you don't play by the rules and you cheat at everything, it becomes difficult to be loving towards that person that's cheating because you're trying to do the right thing and play by the rules, and they're increasing because they're not playing by the rules. I don't know, but there's more depth to that I probably can't quite understand at this point. I'm sure God will. Well, he like he often does, he reveals things to you when you don't expect it, and when you've read the same chapter 5-10 times, he'll end up revealing something new to you. That one will probably be one of the new ones that he reveals later in life. "But the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come." I just want to briefly address the question that invokes, that a lot of people struggle with when they think about Christianity being the only way to heaven, to eternal life, to God. And that's not an easy question, and I don't claim to understand perfectly everything about that question. I do claim that I believe that God is a righteous judge, and that he judges each of us individually and righteously on an individual basis. So there's some things where Jesus is calling for this, the gospel being preached around the world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. I think part of that is so that every nation and every person has an opportunity to hear, to see, to taste Christianity, to feel this word of life, this Christ. Everybody has an opportunity to gain that. And that's part of why this is happening before the end of the world comes, because that evens the playing field. That allows God's elect to come and be saved from every nation. That's part of it. And then, people rightfully ask the question of, what about the people who currently have never heard about Jesus and will never hear about Jesus and will die before they ever hear about Jesus. Which I'm assuming that there probably are some people, probably a lot fewer than I might, or than any of us might expect, but to truly have never heard the name Jesus or never known anything about Jesus is probably a fairly small margin in the world. But for the people that are in that category, I think that it's biblically, you can, oh man, how do I speak? You can provide biblical evidence to support the ideology that God judges people differently based on their level of knowledge, or in contrast, their ignorance. An example is Adam and Eve in the beginning being naked and not having any shame, and then once they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they then were like, oh, wait a minute, we're naked right now, and they started trying to clothe themselves and to cover themselves. And so the Bible in other places describes nakedness as being a sin. It's probably contextual depending on where you're naked, but describes nakedness as a sin. And Adam and Eve only realized that after they had knowledge of good and evil. But before that, it didn't give any indication that God was going to rain hellfire on them for sinning, because they didn't know. They weren't aware of what they were doing. So I think I'm personally of the side of believing that God doesn't attribute sin to people who are truly ignorant. And I think truly ignorant is pretty difficult. And I think it's a sliding scale that God is fit to be the judge of, right? It's a slippery slope because all of us have a plethora of our own motives, our own hearts, our own actions, everything that makes each individual situation different in large ways and in small ways. And God is the one that's fit to judge that. And it says that he's passed that to Jesus, but rightfully so. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, this gets interesting too. Hang on, let me just bring up references because I did read those and they were interesting. When you see the abomination of desolation, and there's 3 references in Daniel that come up on my Bible program here, and it reads this way. 2 of them don't help me understand as much. One of them gives me a little bit of something. And he will make a firm covenant with them. This is Daniel 9:27. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. It's a hard one to understand. And I'll just mention the second one, which is Daniel 11:31. Forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice, and they will set up the abomination of desolation. Set up the abomination of desolation. It seems like after they have taken away the regular sacrifice. And I'm going to mention the third one still. From the time, this is 12:11, from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. That's interesting. So it seems like the abomination of desolation specifically is some sort of a idol, maybe a god of some sorts, lowercase g, or maybe like it's clearly going to be something powerful because of what Jesus says next. And this is something that I think a lot of Christians don't necessarily come into contact with. So I'm going to go ahead and push past this despite its interesting nature because I don't have a lot of value to put on it because I don't understand it perfectly. But let's keep going where there is more value. The abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. When you see the abomination of desolation, when you see that idol, that lowercase g god, that thing that's able to perform wonders or whatever it's got going on that people are wanting to worship it, then you got to flee. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Jesus says in Judea. That's important. Whoever is on the housetop must go down to get the things that are in his house. Whoever's in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. But pray that your flight will not be in the winter or on Sabbath. I find it really interesting that Jesus says the word flight. What does that mean? Did he already know that airplanes were going to exist later in history? What is going on? Why did he say that? Pray that your flight will not be in the winter or on a Sabbath. For then there will be a great tribulation, such as not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. A huge thing's about to go down with a lot of suffering. Unless those days had been cut short, no life would have been saved. Whatever's coming is so horrendous that if the literal positioning of astrology, or was astrology or astronomy? Planets, not zodiac stuff. Planets, whichever one is planets. Like literally, the position of sun and moon is literally going to allow the days to be shortened somehow. Something's going to change to allow the days to literally be shortened. And if that didn't happen, Jesus is saying no life is going to be saved if that didn't happen. Something intense is going to go down. But for the sake of the elect, I wanted to talk about this for a second. For the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Actually, I think, what I was going to talk about that is a little bit further down. Then if anyone says to you, behold, here is the Christ, or there he is, don't believe him. Then, he says then specifically. So if you've seen the Abomination of Desolation and all this stuff starts happening, don't look anywhere for the Christ. For false Christs, false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders. They're going to do signs, wonders, miracles, so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. And I thought this was interesting. I wanted to touch on this quickly because it reminded me of concepts inside Calvinism. And I'm not an expert on Calvinism, but this is something that I find interesting to believe in Calvinism in light of this verse. And if anybody's a Calvinist, by all means, comment and tell me the right way to interpret this. Where's the verse at? So from what I understand about what Calvinists believe in the Bible, the word elect, or the word for elect or chosen, is super important, because from what I understand, you cannot in Calvinism become a follower of God unless he chooses you, and unless you are one of his elect and one of his chosen. And then if you are an elect and a chosen and you're in a church and you're doing good and you're serving God, and then everything's fine. You're one of his elect, you're one of his chosen, everything's normal. But if you instead fall away, or if you apostate, or if you renounce your religion and stop believing in God, it's not that you once were elect and that you went away from being elect, or that you rejected being chosen. It's instead that you were never elect and you were never chosen, and that you are a fake the entire time. Correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, please just bypass this. But I think this is what I've heard from a Calvinist preacher talk about. Hopefully, it's a long time ago. Hopefully, I'm not misremembering it. But I believe this is what I heard from a Calvinist preacher a long time ago. And so what I found a struggle is, this says to mislead the elect. So by that reasoning, if you're an elect person, and if you apostate, or if you fall away from God, then you were never elect. You were just a sham the entire time. How would you be misled? Because this implies that you are an elect, and that doesn't change. You are an elect, God's chosen, and yet you were misled by signs and wonders that you couldn't deny. False prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. And I think there's you could draw at straws a bit to try and say if possible is potentially fastidious, being used fastidiously by Christ. I find that hard to rest my ideology and faith on personally. It just seems difficult. Anyway, if you have anything to add on that, by all means, add that in the comments. Behold, I have told you in advance. So if Jesus said, I've told you in advance. So if they say to you, behold, he's in the wilderness, don't go out. Behold, he's in the inner rooms, don't believe them. And here's why. For just as lightning comes from the east and flashes... Oh, I lost the place. For just as lightning comes from the east and flashes even to the west, so the coming of the Son of Man will be. What does that mean? Well, look at the whole sky everywhere. If there's lightning inside the sky, you're going to see it. Nobody's missing it. It covers the whole thing. So the coming of the Son of Man will be. You're not going to miss it. Nobody's going to have to say to you, go look that way. You're not going to be able to miss it. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Don't understand that one. Jesus said it for a reason. I don't understand. But immediately after... How time am I? Oh, I'm at 15 minutes. This is a big chapter. How long am I? Let me see what I can do. But immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect. They're going to gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other, everywhere. Now learn the parable of the fig tree. Actually, I wanted to touch on that. From the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. That was interesting to me because it kind of fits, from what I understand, the idea of the rapture being like we're in an instant gathered together with Christ in the sky. I wonder if this is saying specifically the angels are going to blow a trumpet, gather together the elect, from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. We're going to be drawn up to the sky, and then the angels are going to come get us and bring us to Christ. I don't know. I'm not an expert on end-time prophecy. I thought it was interesting that it specifically said gathering us from the sky. Anyway, now learn the parable of the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that the summer is near. So you too, when you see these things, recognize that he is near, right at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all things take place. That's interesting. I wonder what Jesus means by that. The only thing that comes to mind is that by generation, he doesn't mean what we would consider a literal generation, but almost like this spiritualized continuation of these people to their sons, to their sons, to their sons, to their sons, like a whole generation of people that are living in the days of Christ's death and crucifixion up until a point in the future. I don't know. But the words like that, like the word day can be used. A day is with the Lord is 1,000 years. And there's aspects like that, right? Like a day can mean an age. It doesn't mean a literal day. There's different things like that where it can be a bit ambiguous. But I'm curious what Christ actually means by that. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. There's going to be a bunch of people doing whatever they want, and they won't even be thinking about God. They're not going to be expecting anything like this, and it's going to come on them. I think in another place he says, like a thief in the night. They're not expecting it. There will be two men in the field. One will be taken and one will be left. Two women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and one will be left. I assume the one that's taken from each of these is the chosen. Be ready for his coming. Therefore, be on alert, for you do not know which day your Lord is coming. So be ready, be on alert. But be sure of this, if the head of the house had known at what time of the night the thief was coming, he would have been on alert and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. For this reason you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour when you do not think he will. Yeah, like if we knew that a thief was coming to try and rob our house, we would be. There's a preacher that talks about it. We'd be sitting on the front doorsteps with a shotgun in hand, waiting. Like, but we don't know. So Jesus is encouraging us to be on alert and be ready. And we don't know the actual day, except God knows. But Jesus also, by that parable that he gave of the fig tree, it's like when you see the fig bringing forth its what did it say, like supple branch and leaves, you know that summer is coming. So when we see these things that Jesus is talking about happening, we know the time is getting nearer. We don't know the day, but we know the time is getting nearer. Who then is faithful and a sensible... Oh yeah, let me reread that. Who then is the faithful and sensible slave whom his master put in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But if that evil slave says in his heart, my master is not coming home for a long time, and begins to beat his fellow slaves and eat and drink with drunkards and become, the master of that slave will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour which he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So by that last, we can confirm that Jesus is talking about end times and like a correlation between this story and our ultimate end, at when Jesus comes back, when Judgment Day comes. And so in this case, I figure we're all as Christians slaves, and the slaves that are in charge of the household, so to speak, is probably the preachers. Probably the preachers and pastors, and me too now that I'm speaking out. I mean, maybe to a lesser extent, but anybody that shares God's word and is sharing food, I got an alarm, sharing God's food, as it were, sharing the spiritual food, this applies to you in probably varying degrees. Blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing with his comes. Truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all of his possessions. That's something new that would be evident, that I haven't seen before, that would be evidence towards, or that I didn't notice before, not that I remember. Put him in charge of all of his possessions. If you're a good servant, a good slave to Christ and to God in this life, that's evidence towards the idea that you'll have a better position in heaven. Like I say, I am still developing my full opinion on that, but there's definitely evidence towards it. At any rate, I appreciate you so much for watching. Yeah, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and comment all the things, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next episode. Thank you.